Hey folks, welcome back to this New Year's edition of Finance Fridays. I'm your host, Lucas Ballahood with Coldwell Banker RMR Real Estate and the Ballahood Group. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague with RBC, Alexandra Job. Alex, how are you doing this year?
Good. Hey, Luke. Happy New Year.
It's a
How were your
gloomy
holidays?
start of it's a gloomy start out there this week anyways. We're recording here January 4th, our regular Wednesday little video date we have here. The holidays were pretty good on our end. I've got two young boys at home and they had a blast over
Mhm.
Christmas. Their aunt and uncle came to stay with us from Calgary. So we had a full house and some extra hands on deck, which is, was certainly a welcome help over Christmas and that. But laid low on New Year's on our part. The kids get up bright and early, so we were in bed before the ball dropped on New Year's Eve. How about you guys?
Nice. I was able to host a little dinner for my grandma's birthday that falls on New Year's, so that was fun. And got up north with the kids before the snow melted, so they got lots of time outside, and they were totally wound for Christmas. So we had a very nice holiday.
Oh, always good. It's funny, eh? Like the last 2 years being such a bit of a blur, not only how fast they went, but just how weird they were over the
Right.
pandemic here. This is thinking about it, this is like our first Christmas back to normal, actually getting to spend time with
Normal.
family.
Yeah, and having those less like hesitation and restrictions to get together. I think people are still mindful of if they're sick to stay home, but it just seemed a lot more normal, which is great.
Yeah, it certainly felt that way and was definitely a positive feeling over the course of the last month here. So that was great. I agree. So what I want to talk about this week, Alex, there's been a few new headlines that have come up here recently, some legislative changes. As we're recording this right now, the market stats for Durham Region's housing market in December haven't been published yet. We'll get those. I think tomorrow is when they're due to be released. But just looking at some of the numbers so far from this past month, it's pretty quiet in December. Relative to the month prior. We saw around 300 sales this past month. We were at around 564 in November in terms of the number of sales. The average price looks like it's going to take a bit of a jump up a little bit, but that's, talking about averages, that's probably just a lack of activity that's going to contribute to
Okay.
some of those higher numbers.
So it
We
doesn't
did
mean
see a,
we're on that upward trend of pricing yet.
I don't think so, right? If you look at, or if we just simply focus on what the lending rates are right now, we saw that increase in December. We're probably going to see another one at the end of January, would be my guess. But with there's just fewer buyers in the market right now, so whether they're being priced out of it based on borrowing costs, or they just like we just talked about with the holidays and sort of feeling like a normal, time with our families again. People just sort of checked out of buying real estate and just enjoyed the holidays and socializing again and doing all those kind of things we haven't been able to do for the past 2 years.
Right. So I think the December numbers, those were to be expected, that we saw less sales, less things come on the market, less activity altogether. Um,
Yeah, like a month over month basis. From November, there was over 1,000 new listings. We hit 355 this past month or
yeah,
somewhere in
it's
that
just a little
neighborhood.
slower.
Yeah, it was definitely a slower time, but it's to be expected. Historically, the holidays are usually December's a quieter month.
Right.
But I was intrigued by, because the news headlines a lot are talking about how far is the market going to fall, right,
Yeah.
in terms of the average pricing and that kind of thing. If you look at the numbers from December of 21 to December of 20, the average price was 1,033,000 in December of 21. There were 671 sales and 565 new listings. They were selling for almost 120% of their list price.
Mm,
So, activity there was more than doubled. Year over
I
year,
see.
the average price that changed there is only 11%. So
Okay.
we're down 11% from in December if that 930 price holds.
Uh-huh.
Um, but look at December of 20,
Hmm.
the average price in December of 20 was $778,000. So you want to compare that to today at 930, we're up still. We're up
Still, you're right.
14% net,
Yeah.
right?
It depends what,
You're
when you're talking about these price trends, it's what you're comparing the data to. So today we're looking at the December data and you're comparing it. If you look at November, that means one thing from November to December. you go back to December of 21 and compare it to this year, or go back to December of 2020 and compare it to this year. Those are all going to feed us different information.
Yeah,
But it's good to
different
know. I love
perspective.
that you share that. Yeah.
Well, and to think about if somebody bought in 2020 when things were really starting to heat up,
Mhm.
and look towards today, 2 years later, or now 2 years later, you're still ahead, right? The
Yeah.
market hasn't, it's not that such a doom and gloom kind of thing. It'll be interesting to see what things look like when we do our year in review analysis, from January 1 of 22 to December 31st.
Yeah.
That's something I'm looking forward to diving into and seeing sort of what happened, how that correlates with interest rate changes
Mhm.
and things like that. So much happened in 2022, right? The interest rates were really low for so long. Then, the conflict in Europe, began in the spring, and things, inflation went crazy from there, and rates only had to start going up, even though they may have been discussing, or at least publicizing, that they were probably going to stay low for a long time.
Mhm.
That obviously was not the case when some of the, world events happen and things change, but we're still in a good spot in terms of our home's values here in Durham, and that's a good thing. But what are you talking about interest rates in that? Like, what are you noticing at RBC as, after we saw that increase in December?
Yeah, it has been. I mean, as it rolls into their connected markets, we're seeing less activity, of course, here with new mortgages. With that being said, we'll see an interest rate announcement again at the end of January. It's specifically January 26th. So we'll look out for that, whether we'll see another increase in rates. I sure hope not, but like I said, I'm always the optimistic one, and you're telling us rates are going to go up. We'll have to do another bet again.
Yeah,
What
actually, I'm
goes
still
on?
waiting on that coffee, actually.
Oh,
That's a
yes, it
good
was
point.
coffee.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
So January 26th, we're gonna circle back to that announcement and see what happens. It will have an impact, of course, on everyone's financial picture, of course, and then again, their qualifying rate. I know that there was a lot of talk about the stress test, and the government may be changing the stress test or eliminating it altogether just because rates are so much higher. So we're qualifying our clients today at a higher rate. But I have to say that the news is that that is not going anywhere. The stress test is here to stay. It will be in place for the coming year, and they don't have any plans on removing that. So that's good to know, because when we hear a little bit of this information, we go, hey, well, if that changes, maybe I'll wait to buy, and it can impact people's decisions. Yeah, so it's good to know that it's staying and it's doing its job, making sure clients are borrowing within their means and being able to look like we qualified our clients around 5%. And here we are in that rate environment where clients' contract rates are now that. So they should be able to afford and keep their homes.
Mhm.
Now, with that being said, I know that after Christmas and after the holidays, it does come with financial stress because of all the extra spending we do and spoiling our kids and hosting parties and doing all this stuff. So I did have a couple of suggestions that I wanted to share with our viewers, something that may help kind of relieve that financial pressure. And one of them being that clients sometimes don't realize they can use their credit card reward points, so specifically with RBC rewards, through their online banking to make bill payments such as their internet, phone bill, hydro payments. Use your points and help, give yourself a little break there. I know people
So
think
is
like
there
gift
any
cards. Sorry, go
Well, are
ahead.
there limitations on what you can use those points for? I know I've definitely used them in the past. I hadn't thought of using them for utilities and things like that,
Yeah.
though. So, like, are there limitations or
No,
no?
mostly the majority of your bill payments can be processed that way. So
Yeah.
it's self-managed through online banking. If you have any questions, you can call 1-800-ROYAL-11 and they can walk you through your options. But you'd be quite surprised that a lot of the major um, utilities and things like that can be paid through your points. So that's sort of fun, right? Take off,
Yeah, absolutely.
reward yourself with your points, which is cool.
It's it's one of those things, like, it's Canadian Tire money.
Yeah.
it's obviously not the same thing, but it's when you can use those kind of things, free cash to leverage those kind of expenses after what would be a tight month budget wise. As yes, we don't spoil our kids, Alex. We would never do that. But that's a great point. I hadn't thought of it quite that way.
And then
Yeah, certainly. And
one other thing there is now this is a different financial impact because the other one's a reward. This one you do essentially you are essentially paying for it, but you're paying for it later. So that is our skip mortgage payment. And that is available to our RBC clients once within a 12-month period, once a year. You can skip a payment. Now, it is provided that your mortgage is in arrears and that your current mortgage balance, together with the amount of payment that you're going to skip, doesn't exceed your original mortgage amount. There's no fee to skip a payment. It's just the amount that you're skipping is added onto your principal. So when you come up for renewal, your payment or your balance wouldn't be at quite as low as what you had anticipated with if you're making all regular payments, of course. So it's sort of it's added on. You have to consider that you still have your property taxes and any insurance like home protector, which is your life and disability or critical illness, that would still come out with the skip and mortgage payment. But it is one of those options that clients forget is there, and it may just be what they need this January.
so not quite a free payment. You're kind of just
Right.
kicking the can down the road,
Yeah.
allowing yourself to get
Picking it
caught
up
up on all
later.
that excess spending that you might have done in December. Yeah, that's, you know what, that's a good thing from a cash flow perspective. That's a useful tool. It allows you to get caught up and you can double up payments again later on in the year as well. You have that opportunity
Absolutely.
to
Yep.
do, right? Maybe get caught up from there even on your own.
Yeah,
So,
so if it's just a
um,
little heavy this month, then those are a couple little tips that you could use to relieve the pressure of, those finances.
yeah, wonderful. Now, a couple of headlines. I know you talked about the stress test and the lack of changes there. Certainly is, I think, from our perspective as professionals in this industry, is a good thing. Sort of saving us from ourselves or from times like now where just you know costs of daily living are higher than they would have been before. So keeping us within our means. But the two new things that have taken effect as of January 1st were actually guinea pigged a little bit out in British Columbia. Those are this is effective across Canada. My understanding is this foreign buyer ban essentially now where if someone's buying residential property, they have to be a Canadian citizen or Canadian
Mhm.
resident,
Mhm.
permanent resident. There are some other rules that go along with that, but that's a new piece of legislation in place trying to increase the available supply of properties. The province of BC, had a big issue in Vancouver. They're a big market similar to Toronto, where they had issues of, where there was foreign investment coming in, buying property, and just leaving it vacant as well, which actually transitions into the next piece of
Right.
legislation that was added to the city of Toronto. It does only affect the city of Toronto, but this is a new vacant home tax in Toronto that essentially requires property owners, residential property owners, to declare the occupancy status of their properties.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if it's a detached home, a semi-detached property, it could be an apartment building with 1 to 3 or more residential units in it. You have to declare what the occupancy status is. And the rule of thumb sort of threshold there is 6 months a year. It's got to be minimum, has to be occupied by you or by someone. It could be a family member or friend, could be a tenant. There are some rules and exceptions to this. For example, as an exception, if someone is going through an illness or battling
Mhm.
something, have an injury or whatever, they're
Mhm.
in hospital receiving care for an extended period of time.
Right.
That would be an exception to this rule. They could be in hospital for 7 months of the year and they don't have to pay this additional tax. There's just some more documentation you've got to provide to support what you're claiming on that declaration. But the tax itself, it could be costly. So the actual fee for this vacant home tax is 1% of its assessed value through MPAC. So that's, if a property in Toronto, if it's $1 million, which is pretty darn normal in the city of Toronto, that's $10,000
Ah.
bill
Mhm.
added, that you're going to get in your tax bill. So if you don't declare the occupancy status, and this is an important date here for folks, if you do own property in the city of Toronto, by February 2nd, if you don't submit the declaration form, your property may be deemed vacant and that tax could be applied. So it's something to get ahead of here. It's brand new. We don't have a ton of time to get that documentation completed and submitted. there's a whole process, and we'll include some links to both the foreign buyer ban and the new vacant home tax for the city of Toronto in the show notes here as well, just so people have some information they can jump to and read up on it if just to get more familiar. And obviously, you're able to give us a call too, and we can point you in the right direction. But those are our two pieces that have come into effect as of this past weekend here, and we'll see what kind of impact it does have. It was fairly negligible, you could argue, in British Columbia, whereas the ban of foreign buyers and the vacant home tax maybe didn't increase supply too much. But if I recall, when I was doing some homework on this topic earlier this year, more or less from an interest perspective, when they started talking about implementing these things here in
Mhm.
Ontario, was, it did only sort of open up maybe a few hundred more properties that were sold over the course of a 2 or 3 year period that this has been in effect in BC. So we'll see what happens here. But, the more the government gets involved with these kind of things, it can complicate situations. But, we'll see what happens. And at the end of the day, we want to, we've got a lot of immigrants coming to Canada in the next year here. It's a couple 100,000 in 2023, if my memory serves me. So we're going to need homes for these people to live in, and anything we can do to increase supply over the long term and near term is a positive step in my mind. So I'm not going to complain too much.
Right.
Is there anything else you think we should dive into today, Alex? It's been a bit of a hefty recording for our first one back at it,
A lot of
but is there
information.
anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, but is there anything else we need to jump onto here while we're chatting?
No, I think you've got it. And like you said, the points are going to be in your on your social media. So if someone wants to dig into that a little bit further, and if you're a numbers person, I love your summary as to what went on over the year as to units and pricing and things like that. So I know you share a lot of that data. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us anytime.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's the name of the game. We are here to help. All right. Well, with that, folks, thanks so much for following along and being with us here today. You can find us on YouTube and our social media channels. You'll find our contact information at the end of this video. So thank you so much for joining us, and have yourselves a great day. Bye for now.
Bye.